Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Agricultural meteorologist Greg Soulje is back here today on this Tuesday after the 4th of July, so after a long weekend, which got a little rain, Greg, a little wet here, but not too bad. You did pretty good on the weather department.
Yeah, some might differ on that. There were some spots that over the past several days, and maybe some of what I'm going to call it the fringe outlying areas of Chicagoland, or the start of what turns out to be farmland and ag areas up near the Wisconsin border, and more so DuPage and Kane counties west of Chicago and point southwest from there, that had 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches of rain, and 2 to 3 in a pretty good stripe across parts of central Illinois and Indiana again. So it's been one of those haves versus have-nots, and of course dealing with severe weather. But weather for now kind of quieting down, cooling down more importantly. But we'll talk about the return of the infamous hot ridge, the hot cap, the warm dome, whatever you want to label it as, going forward here later on this week, and more so into next week and beyond.
All right, let us know what's ahead.
All right, here we go. And some of the headlines and highlights across the Corn Belt areas, looking at 90-degree weather readings expected to play out in some areas, far western reaches of the Corn Belt, as in southeast South Dakota, parts of Nebraska on westward from there. The overall weather pattern continues to be sun-filled, and again, some pretty good crop growth and development where soil moisture has been even keeled, and everyone else pretty much in the 80s by day, 60s at night, and a great accumulation of growing degree day units. Matter of fact, on some of the crop growth and development and reproductive stages right now, corn silking right now at about 16%, 34% of the beans are blooming, and it's relatively close to some of the 5-year averages. Meanwhile, at least 2/3 of the Midwestern corn and soybean fields are in the good to excellent category. So despite dealing with first some dryness and drought, too much rain, not enough rain, heat, and then no heat, and then another round of shower and thunderstorm activity over the holiday weekend, doing relatively well across the nation's midsection. And so it goes. Meanwhile, if we take a look at the drought monitor, and this does not take into account the rains from the holiday weekend, still some dry areas and patches through the upper Midwest, as far south as far northern Illinois as you got north and west of Des Moines and into the upper Midwestern areas. So still some work to do there. I think with time we will, but it may be one of these derecho setups as we kind of reposition the hot ridge over parts of the plains. And again, those systems like to run the top of the hot ridge and its areas to the north and east. That's usually the place where things can accelerate from a thunderstorm standpoint. But we'll take a look at that a little bit later on here in the get together. So the heat is up across much of the central and southern plains, with the exception of areas near the Canadian border where some shower and thunderstorm activity. Second day in a row, they've had some pretty good rains for some of the spring grain areas of the Dakotas and southern Canadian prairie. As far north as the Black Hills, and points east and south from there, 95 to 100-degree heat anticipated. While again, as mentioned, the showers and thunderstorms are coming out of Big Sky Country along the Canadian border and east towards maybe Bismarck, Jamestown. Areas east of there had as much as 2 to 3 inches of rain over the past 36 hours, and up to the Arrowhead of Minnesota, where there was some severe weather yesterday, Monday afternoon, and the evening time. The final winter wheat ratings of the season for the nation's midsection, pretty abysmal at 47% of the crop rated poor and very poor. About 90% of that is situated across Nebraska. So some none too fantastic yields coming in out of those combines across the winter wheat belt as harvest kind of begins to wind down over there. Meanwhile, in the southern states, the heat has tempered. The heat wave has been broken, and there's been some shower and thunderstorm activity into the mid-Atlantic region. That's really been the epicenter of the ongoing dryness and drought and 100-degree heat over the course of the holiday weekend. Topsoil moisture shortages plenty across the Carolinas, Virginia, running at about 60, 65, 68% there, short and very short. Take a quick look at the Atlantic satellite picture. Things are quiet from a tropical standpoint. Yeah, we started the season June 1. Keeping an eye on things. We had that one named feature just offshore of Texas for about 24 hours, not even that, a few weeks ago. But using El Nino setups, it's not a very busy tropical season in the Atlantic basin. There's a quick snapshot of the drought monitor from late last week. And improvement through Mississippi and Georgia, marginal improvement through Florida. Probably still some fire situations, issues down across the Everglades, eastern Everglades, with the worst of the dryness and drought through Virginia and North Carolina, north of kind of the Triangle Park research area of Raleigh-Durham. And across the western states, some isolated shower thunderstorm activity through the Great Basin into the Rockies. These showers have been dry-based, some thunder and lightning. The lightning sparks the dry vegetation, and you're off to the races out there with wildfire potential. And it's really been centered across Utah for now, and you can actually see it on some of the visible satellite pictures, images, if you were to zero in across Utah, where some of the main fire areas are going. They look to be south and southwest of Salt Lake City, and the east of and southeast of there, banked up near the Colorado border. So, and there's been heat too over the desert southwest and as far north as eastern Washington state, with the western position of that heat ridge. The rest of the country, from a dryness and drought standpoint, you can see the mid-Atlantic region down through Florida, Arklatex to the eastern Texas, otherwise are in relatively good shape. Hill country back in the Rio Grande areas from Oklahoma City east improved, much of Kansas, and again, the worst of it from a corn belt and winter wheat standpoint in through Nebraska, and pretty much widespread except for areas getting runoff moisture from the snows, irrigation, if you will, into the central and southern valleys of California. The fire situation remains of at least isolated to maybe elevated nature in that brown to orange area, but extending back into Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. Little changes we look forward to tomorrow across the western states, and probably not much anticipated. Will maybe begin to heighten up and ramp up the monsoon setup. And again, these tend to be at the onset of the season, dry-based, lightning-based thunderstorms, more of that than any organized rainfall. There's the big picture from a satellite perspective. You can see the cloudiness, the showers and thunderstorms across the Dakotas, and in through Montana, the little bumpy ripply clouds there, and some spotty shower activity into parts of the upper Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic region, and into the northeast of New England. Jet stream pattern, the upper level winds at 25,000 feet, pretty weak, pretty diffuse. That's what you expect. You can see some semblance of pieces of the ridge over the western Corn Belt, Plain States, and points on southward. Under the ridge, you tend to cap the atmosphere, and that's where some of the hotter temperatures under the right circumstances get going. That ridge area is going to establish itself there, maybe a slight drift to the east, and strengthen over the next couple of 2 or 3 days. So there will be more hot and humid and dry related issues in the plains and western Corn Belt areas. Pretty diffuse looking surface map, little circulation in the eastern Corn Belt, little dewdrop up near the Canadian border, weak high pressure across the central Rockies. And the radar composite with the satellite picture, you can see most of the significant rainfall up across North Dakota, parts of Montana, and we can extend that north up into southern Canada as well, and a couple of showers and thunderstorms down through parts of eastern Texas. Nothing too fancy on the weather maps and charts as you would expect for early July as well. Going forward this afternoon, some showers, thunderstorm activity, locally severe across South Dakota. That activity continues up through the northernmost plains of North Carolina, I should say North Dakota, and Montana. Meanwhile, across the Carolinas to the Ohio Valley, the I-64 corridor on southward, usual afternoon, daytime heating, bubble up, hit, miss, all or nothing shower thunderstorm activity. Rainy season is kind of marginal down through Florida. Later on this afternoon, severe weather potential in and around the Black Hills, Lead, Custer, Deadwood, those particular areas. And this time of the year, that tends to be more hail producers than anything. And for another round of it, showers and thunderstorms focused on some of the drier areas of the upper Midwest. Sections of Minnesota where a couple of 2 or 3 days ago they had some rougher weather up into the Arrowhead. So some of those upper Midwestern, Western Great Lakes region getting some nice recharge through tomorrow morning. A couple of showers and thunderstorms over the Mid-Atlantic region tomorrow afternoon and evening time. Daytime heating, nearby front, top part of the ridge up aloft, and we'll get a band of some rainfall over Nebraska into parts of Iowa and Wisconsin. So again, the ongoing dryness and drought related issues, if things don't get out of control, you get your moisture across those northern and western Corn Belt sections and into the Mid-Atlantic region and Ohio Valley. Don't foresee any terribly widespread severe weather for the upper Midwest, but it's still back in the forecast for Iowa. That's the rainfall it is. Wisconsin, Michigan. Nice pickup on the rainfall for some of the Mid-Atlantic region. This afternoon, the severe weather potential north and west of the Twins, out through Miles City, back down to the Black Hills and points out of the east. Everybody else is pretty much at the garden variety setup, and maybe a few stronger storms from afternoon and evening time as far south as western and northwestern Kansas, much of Nebraska, a little corridor north of Des Moines up to about Lambeau and south to about Madison. That's just a slight risk level 2 out of 5. Next 48 hours, the more significant rain situated in 2 areas, the Red River Valley of the north, the midsection, if you will, and across Wisconsin, trailing back into parts of the western Corn Belt and kind of dotting the deep south and southeastern states. If you squint real well, you can see high temperatures today, generally ranging through the mid and upper 90s from the I-80 corridor of Nebraska on southward and west of about the Missouri River, and will basically hold there, at least compress it temporarily southward with upper 70s and 80s. Good crop growing conditions over the rest of the heartland, and a pretty manageable setup with outdoor work and livestock operations in mind. By the time we get to Friday, the heat is basically tempered across the Corn Belt, and it's come down somewhat over sections of the northern and central plains, 90s and through big sky country, the western Dakotas, maybe some low to mid 90s over the southern plains, 100-degree heat in the southwest, not unusual for the time of year there, and readings generally into the 80s across the Great Plains and Corn Belt areas. Come Saturday, you can see the red area beginning to reestablish itself, and it with time will spread east and south as the hot ridge reestablishes itself, the warm ridge, the capped atmosphere, the 500 millibar ridge, however you want to officially name it, not name it, or misname it. That's about the way it will play out here going forward in the days to come. And by the time we get to Monday, pretty hot, humid stuff as far north as the Black Hills, through the rest of the Dakotas, the west and northern Corn Belt area. So luckily, hopefully, you'll have the rains timed out. You get some rain. Root systems are in good shape, and you can deal with some degree of heat up there with, generally speaking, low to mid 90s anticipated. So watch over Friday to Saturday to Sunday. Kind of a zonal west to east flow. The hot ridge has made it to almost Salt Lake City over Saturday, builds up to Salt Lake City and maybe to about the Black Hills into Sunday, begins to expand and broaden out over the central plains and parts of the western Corn Belt between Monday and Tuesday. That steers the jet stream pattern into the Pacific Northwest. And we got to watch sometimes the northern end of that H, the stronger wind ribbon. That's where you get these storm clusters to race along. Hardly any rain, but they'll blow like gangbusters and put down some hail. So it's kind of that derecho setup, but primarily up near the Canadian border, northern lakes region into the northeast New England. We anticipate with time a flattening out of that ridge, a westward movement. And we do, and we've talked about this before. I'm still not, convinced that this is going to be a hot summer. Still think we have a markedly cooler back end of July and August to contend with from a growing degree day standpoint. But for now, it is what it is in this still generally dominated El Nino and strengthening El Nino setup. Not a super one, moderate for now. And no, super does not exist on the vernacular going forward. And going forward here, got a front between Saturday and Sunday over the middle part of the Corn Belt, middle part of the plains. That'll bring some organized rainfall as early as Thursday, more likely Friday, moving out Saturday to Sunday across the middle part of the country. High pressure builds on in, and it's a warm area of high pressure, not of Canadian origin, just because of the sinking air mass and the high up aloft over the middle part of the country. So temperatures generally still into the upper 70s and mostly 80s across the Corn Belt areas. Over eastern and southern areas, we talked about the heat building into the upper Midwest and far northwestern reaches. And yeah, there may be some locally heavy rainfall in some of the same areas that we saw over the holiday weekend, east central and central Illinois, parts of Indiana, down through Ohio. Everybody else dealing with some magnitude or scale of heat going forward the next 5 to 7 days, whether it's the western states, upper Midwest, northern plains, maybe parts of cattle country as well through Oklahoma and Texas, through poultry areas and through the southeastern states and Delta region. But hey, it's been July by then. What do you expect? So the showers and thunderstorms over the central and eastern parts of the country going forward. Afternoon activity will tend to wind down over the southeastern parts of the country, then become more focused on that cold front before the hot ridge establishes itself over the middle part of the country. Late in the week, we'll get into some drier air for the plains and upper Midwest as the Corn Belt rains shift east and south. And the temperatures slightly cooler up near the Canadian border, no big deal. The heat is expected to wind down again over the southeastern part of the country, the deep south, but reestablishing itself over the ridge areas of the middle part of the country, and generally hot, dry weather across the western states, although I think by late in the weekend, early next week, the monsoon setup gets going. And you can see that little tongue of moisture through Old Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico. That's more likely into early to mid next week. But the time frame here, the next 5 to 7 days, and the next 7 days in particular, early on for parts of Minnesota, the Dakotas, and Nebraska, later on into parts of the Great Lakes region, and then towards early next week over the southeastern Corn Belt. So everyone's going to get more rain and get well watered down. And again, some folks have been in excess mode here in parts of Missouri as well as Illinois. The folks that went already a couple of times through the batting order with planning, and they are back into standing water mode. So that's still an area or some pockets that we will continue to monitor. But as a whole, everybody, generally speaking, doing relatively well. There's the warm to hot ridge right there over the middle part of the country. That would be Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma. Again, the top side and eastern side is where systems strengthen as they drop south and southeast into a trough over the northeastern part of the country. We think that trough with time in the next probably 6 weeks or so will strengthen. And we do have some pretty good cool air surges for the middle and back end of the growing season across the Corn Belt. But until then, we'll keep an eye on these thunderstorms and the heat as well. Generally focused over the west, but temperatures, these will be generally conducive of sending readings into the 90 to 95 degree range over a wide area of the Corn Belt, upper 80s over the eastern Great Lakes region, and even still ranging through the low to mid and some spots upper 90s down through the southeastern part of the country, where in absence of rainfall first gets going as expected in the middle part of the country, organized, if you will, loosely over the southeastern states. A little monsoons set up over the western states. Going forward, the hot ridge is still there. There's a little more northwest flow up aloft, so that tells us despite a drier scenario, you can still get these derechos and these thunderstorm complexes. They may bring you a tenth to a quarter inch of rain, when the averages for summertime are generally across the heartland in the quarter to half inch category. So this would generally mean two things: easing, a winding down of temperatures east of the Missouri, and a winding down of moisture as well, generally either side of the Missouri and Red River Valley to the north on eastward, a little more normal into the Ohio Valley. That is indicative of maybe two things. There have been a couple of systems. One strong one out towards Guam. We think the central Pacific's getting a little more active and will do so. The models have been suggesting something off of Baja about 10 days, 12 days out. So that could be a kick of tropical moisture and monsoon moisture in the west and southwestern part of the country. Not unusual for this particular stronger El Nino setup. Nothing of significance, usually of broader scale and frequency in the Atlantic, and a far more busier Pacific basin hurricane season, which one or two may take a run in Hawaii, and one or two may actually come into Baja and bring the remnant moisture over the southwestern part of the country. In any event, we can go into greater detail talking about that on our live stream on July 21st at 1 o'clock Central Time. So some rain, some easing of temperatures. We've got some heat in the forecast, but still, Sarah, I think the long range continues to point towards a cooler back end of summertime across a good part of the Corn Belt, at least in areas really east of the Missouri River, but really focused over the northern and eastern Corn Belt. We'll update that thinking and everything else, and we'll get together towards the third week of July here on our get-togethers.
Very good. Of course, we'll be touching in with you a couple times before then to get updates as well. So it sounds like a little more rain in the forecast.
More rain, more storms. July, it could be a whole lot worse. But I think this last system that's coming on through is probably the last real organized rains outside of these little derecho-driven outbreaks. And I know we make a lot of mention about derechos, but it's pretty much a classbook setup going forward. And I think we've got some cooler days, so enjoy the growing degree day unit accumulation for now. I think the back end of summertime here may be a little more problematic from a growing degree day standpoint, but we'll talk about that here in the next couple of weeks.
Sounds like I need to take that 7 inches of rain that I got this weekend over to Utah as I head that way. This week.
Fires.
Put out some forest fires.
Yeah, the forest fires for now. But again, some optimism. We may get into some tropical moisture. But before that, and it's usually these lightning-based thunderstorms that become more problematic, and then you get some relief from Mother Nature. So kind of a double-edged sword. But anything you can do helping them, even stretching the garden hose out across Utah would be all the while better.
Very good. All right, Greg, thank you so much for joining us here today, and we appreciate all of you tuning in as well.